Welcome to Pixel Composer 1.16.3. In this version comes with a lot of new features and nodes, so let's get through it. The first node is a sphereize node. Now this node will allow you to create a sphere effect similar to when you project your image into a sphere and then render it out in orthographic camera. Next is a vignette node. Now the vignette effect are quite common effect where the edge of your image is a little bit darker. You can already create the effect by using the gradient node and some blending. However, I have seen some new algorithm that give you a different looking effect that can be a little bit more difficult to replicate with the gradient effect. So now we have the new dedicated vignette node. Next is the offset node, which allows you to shift your image around and do the tiling automatically. Now this node can be replicated easily using the transform node. Right, you have the transform and you can move it. And then you set the tiling to on. It's gonna do the exact same things, but I make it an offset because I think it's a fairly common effect that can be kind of annoying if you have to go to the transform all the time. So I make it a dedicated effect just like the scale node. And next is the reaction diffusion node, which allows you to simulate the reaction between two different types of chemicals, which will give you this kind of like organic looks. You can also change the parameters. You just have to play around to give you a different looking effect. But I think the results are quite interesting and it's gonna be some other node that you have to experiment with yourself. Another thing is that this node will use feedback system. So there's feedback loop here to loop the reacted image back in the next frame to continue the animation. Next is MK Brownian node, which allows you to simulate a Brownian motion, which is basically just a random movement motion of a particle to create something like a dust. Now you can also use the particle node to recreate this kind of effect, but this node will have properties specifically just for this random motion. And the next node related to particle effect would be the MK Falls, which is a node that are built just for simulating a leaf falling effect. So it's quite specific, but I think that a lot of people want to create this kind of simulation due to the fact that I posted a video of this node and got a lot of attention of people online. So I think it's going to be very useful. I have been trying to replicate this kind of effect using particle node for a while now, but there's really a limitation of what you can do with like just rotating the sprite. But here the node will generate the leaf geometry dynamically, so it will render leaf in a more accurate manners. You can also control the property related just for the leaf itself, like you can control the swing of the leaf directly in both X and Y axis. You can make it do some interesting like rotating effect, and you can also enable the ground properties to make your leaf stop when it reaches the ground and will just like rotate to rest appropriately. And next is the MK Blinker node. This node is also really specific, but I think it can be useful. For example, when you have an image like this, you can see that the building have a lot of windows, right? And each of the windows have the same colors. Then you can use the MK Blinker and then set the target color to the window color. And then you can just tell them, as you can see here, it's gonna light up the region of the same colors. And you can also set the amount of the blink. So like you can increase the amount or decrease the amount of the area where you want it to light up. You can also add in mask, and the mask here will exclude or include the entire region. So I think you can create some interesting effect using it. And next we have MK Lens Flare, which as the name suggests, allows you to add lens flare to your image. Let me increase the scale a little bit. The lens flare itself are also being defined using this flare editor, so that you can change each individual component of the flare, like the position. You can change the alphas, the shape on all the different property we have here. And the next node is the MIDI in node. This node will allow the software to read in the MIDI information. Like in the example, I connect to my MIDI keyboard. We have here, you can see the input here. And when I press a key on it, you're gonna see that there is some number being recognized. It will also detect the pressing node, and there's some raw message going in and out here. When you add in this node, it will enable the live update mode, which means that your entire node graph will be rendered in real time to be able to capture all the message here. Also, when you rotate like a slider and the knob, you will see the message. However, this is kind of hard to use. So if you want to detect like some specific key or some specific knobs, you can go to the washer area here and then click on add. You're gonna say waiting for input. Now I'm gonna rotate some knobs, and you will see that it create new output here that will only detect the value of the specific knobs that I have. I can add new washer, and this time I'm gonna move the slider, and we're gonna have another output, this time detecting the slider information. So the last node is a graph preview. This node will allow you to preview your image directly on the graph itself. So we have some image here, connect it to graph preview, and it will show up in your graph. And when you select this graph preview, you'll be able to move it around. You can scale it up or down. You can also set the alpha or the opacity of your image. And by default, it would be in a sticky mode, which means that no matter where you pan your image, you're gonna see the preview in the background. But if you want to make the image move by your view, you can disable the sticky mode. The image will now like bake in on your graph itself, and when you pan or zoom, it will now move respecting to your current view. Also, if you are a Patreon supporter, you will also have an access to a 3 new nodes in this version as well, which is the Pythagorean tile, herringbone tile, and random tile. All of these nodes related to tile generation, and it gives you different tile patterns that can be really useful in procedural texture generation. And that's all for new nodes. Now let's go through the improvement on the current node and the graph system. And the first one is actually quite big, is the adding of alpha channel to all color palette and gradient information. So now when you have a color, here you can go to the color selector. You will see that there's new alpha slider here that you can adjust. So you can set the alpha value directly. Same thing also go with the palette. When you go to the palette selector, you can also adjust the alpha value of each individual color, and the same thing with gradient as well. You can now select the individual key and then adjust the alpha value. So when you have your gradient like this, you can now add alpha value to create more interesting effect. Now this feature requires a lot of like refactoring and reworking, so there may be some nodes that I forgot to include the alpha calculation into it. If you found any node that when you change alpha and it doesn't do anything, then you can report to me in the Discord or itch.io so that I can go and address those. But I think that most of the more commonly used nodes should already be updated. The next update will be about the grid node. In both rectangular, triangular, and hexagonal grid, you get a new option for creating a true shade patterns. So when you use texture sampling mode like this, if you enable true shade mode, you're gonna see that some of them will got randomly rotate so that you can generate a true shade patterns. We also have the new echo option in the transform node. We have an animation that looks like this, right? Then we can enable echo. We can set echo amount to default, which is 8. And as you can see that the movement here, it will now like have multiple copies of the image between the previous frame and the current one. And in the scatter node, there is also an option to sort a sprite by the y-axis. So as you can see here, without y-axis, all the image will just overlap each other. But when you select sort y, it will now sort the image correctly so that the image with a higher y-axis will appear on top. Next update will be about the particle node. So first is by default, if you don't provide any particle sprite, it will now have the default just single dot sprite. The particle node also have the new properties, which called follow path, which allow you to provide a path for the particle to follow. So we can have a path that look like this. The position of the particle will be the current position plus the path position. So we might want to reduce the spawn velocity. We can just set the spawn velocity to 0. And if we move the spawn point near the 0 point, so the top left here, you're gonna see that your particle are now following the path. And the more or the larger deviation you give it to this area, you're gonna see that the particles start to move away from the path. Also, a property called path deviation. So if by default it's just set to the curve of 1, which means that it's gonna use 100% of its position plus the path position. But if you set it to 0, you're gonna see that the particle will not move away from the path at all. Even when you increase the particle spawn area, it would still stay at the path. And the next is about the background. So now you can provide a background image to your particle directly. So you connect to the background particle, and when you render the particle node, it will now have the background show up. And when you're using the background, you will see that the dimension of your final image will now respect the dimension of the background, not the dimension property inside the particle node. The next update is related to interface. Now this interface update is quite small, but the first thing you may already notice is that some of the group here will have this toggle button. In the past, some of the property here we're gonna have like a boolean value inside that you can toggle, but now that toggle is moved to the group itself. We call it group toggles, which make it easier for you to see like which property being turned on and off. And there's an improvement to how you rearrange the color in the palette editor. And there's a number of bug fixes. The important one is the performance issue related to Steam Workshop. So that will be it for today's video. Now I'm gonna start creating more feature related video to a smaller version now, instead of just focusing on a major update, because there are a lot of smaller quality of life features that I want to talk about now. I might even go back to the previous version to include some of the features in the previous version that I haven't talked about as well. The reason why I haven't made a new video lately is because I always works on the beta version. When I create a tutorial video, I might include a feature that only available for the beta people, and the majority of users is still unstable at the moment, so they might not be able to find those features. And I myself don't even remember what feature is in stable, what feature is in beta. But I mean, with this kind of shorter individual update video like this, it might allow me to create more video in the later version and then just point people to the beta branch on the Steam or itch.io where they want some feature that they cannot find in the stable one. And yeah, for now, thank you for watching and see you in the next one.